It appears that she never publicly announced her pregnancy. However, she did post several pictures on social media where it looked as though her hands were on her stomach, one with her boyfriend with his hand on her stomach as well. She also would repost a lot of motherhood memes where she made comments like mother goals, or I hope I can have this one day. She had her own list of goals in a TikTok video that she posted back in June, where she put the emoji of a pregnant woman. Then she also had put a wedding ring as well. So there were certainly a lot of photos and activity on her social media alluding to a pregnancy, or dropping little Easter egg hints at being pregnant, but she never outright announced it or told anybody. We also know that when she delivered the baby, whatever day that actually was, she didn't call anybody over to the house. She did it all by herself. So it's very possible that she was trying to conceal this, but was just lightly, dropping little hints out there.
They do not want this case converted to a murder case. As of right now, I believe, unless something's changed since last time I looked, they have insufficient evidence to say this was a live birth. With the insufficient evidence, and by the way, I've handled cases like this that were charged as murder and ended up getting dismissed multiple times, because it's really quite astonishing when you get into the scientific literature just how primitive the methods are when you're trying to determine if it's a live birth. So if they don't have that evidence, and if they don't have information publicly, or somebody who is saying that she admitted it, or concessions of some kind, I think it's a very tough case for the prosecution.
It's unclear when the exact timing began with her current relationship and ended with her last, but there does appear to be a little bit of overlap from when she possibly got pregnant. So I believe it's my understanding that the ex-boyfriend has since come forward, providing his DNA as well to see if he's the father. There is some uncertainty about which one of these men fathered the child, if either of them did.
I want to show you something else, and a lot of people are talking about it. This is a picture posted by Abby Blabby, True Crime and News on Facebook. And this is 10 months before all of this, where it appears that she's dressed as a pregnant woman last year for Halloween, 10 months before her arrest. I don't know what that means. There is some level of, I'm wondering if she wanted to be pregnant. All of this, to me, Mark, is this a case where you would get your client evaluated to see psychologically where they are in all of this? Because some of what's alleged here doesn't seem like a sane person would do necessarily, that they'd be suffering from some sort of mental illness.
Well, it's funny you say that, Vinny, because one of the first things that I would recommend if somebody came to me and said, I would both have physical and mental evaluations done. And the reason I say physical is I found quite a few examples, mostly anecdotal, obviously, in the literature about women who had given birth stillborn and did not know they were pregnant. And there are various conditions that are associated with that. I won't get into the scientific terms, but that happens. Both physically, that's a phenomena, and mentally, that is also a phenomena, although exceedingly rare. And when it does happen, that's one of the first things you have to do, because, mind you, the charges as they were originally filed, I believe they were mishandling of a corpse or something like that, is generally a lower grade crime and could be defensible if you don't have any evidence, to your point, pre-birth that somebody knew about it. And if this turned out that it was a stillborn birth, then that is a completely different ballgame than, obviously, if you could show that somebody was expecting it, somebody knew about it, somebody didn't take the prenatal care that they needed to. That's a whole different set of problems in and of itself.
Yeah, we haven't heard anything about any doctors or doctor appointments yet. But Annie, it looks like her family in court supporting her. It's not like she's got that support. So to me, that's another part of the equation in many of these cases, is where they're hiding it from their family, maybe from their parents. Have the parents spoken out at all about this?
They haven't publicly spoken out, but there has been someone who came forward, and it's unconfirmed if it was the father of the boyfriend or another family member of Lakin's, but there was somebody who came forward saying that her father is devastated, that he has been just silent and is distraught over all of this, but that her mother refuses to speak on it and has only referred to the baby as it. Now, again, unconfirmed, that was just put out there, but take it for what it is.
The Fayette County coroner listed the manner of death as currently undetermined. The report noted that extensive microscopic analysis are essential to determine the cause and manner of death, and that this death affects many lives in our neighboring state of Tennessee, and as well as those in the Commonwealth. We are currently conducting a thorough and methodical death investigation to ensure all facts are carefully considered.
So what they're going to be looking at is they're going to be looking at each of the organs from the fetus or the infant, looking for changes that are consistent with life, like aeration of the lungs or filling up of the air sacs in the lungs with air. They'll also be looking at the placenta, trying to look for any evidence of infection, hemorrhage, or anything that could have caused the baby to be born prematurely. How long will this take? It just depends on the lab that they have available. It can take anywhere from 2 to 3 to 4 weeks at the most, but they should have an answer probably within the next month and a half.
And do you believe they will be able to make a determination one way or the other? What does it hinge on here?
So with these type of infants that are found in bags, it hinges on a lot. The biggest thing is did they breathe? Is there air in the lungs? Is there air in the stomach? And that can be difficult to determine just from looking at it. You can do postmortem imaging with x-rays, and you can also do the histologic analysis or microscopic analysis looking at the air in the lungs. But that can be disrupted by decomposition, where bacteria produces air. It can also be disrupted by if there was any CPR done. So you have to look at the baby itself. Is the baby decomposing? Will there be bacteria forming in there, creating air? So there's a lot of factors that come into play. And then you're going to look at the placenta as well, looking for infection. And you can look at the umbilical cord itself and look for inflammation there as well that would show signs of a live birth. These type of cases are very difficult to get a good cause and manner of death on.
All right, Mark, let me go back to you now. If they cannot make that determination, is homicide off the table, do you believe? Or would prosecutors potentially, based on something else perhaps, still go forward?
Look, my experience, and I've had this, your ME there is spot on. I've done this cross-examination at least 4 times, and I will tell you it's virtually impossible for an MD, ME to conclude to any kind of a scientific certainty that there's been a live birth. In fact, when I did the deep dive to prepare for the cross-examination, I was actually stunned at like I said, the primitive or medieval kinds of ways to try to back into determining if it was a live birth. Looking at the sacs and whether or not there was a breath taken, and all of it is a fairly rudimentary scientific analysis that doesn't yield any kind of definitive answer, at least in my experience when looking at this. The placenta and the hemorrhaging is an interesting kind of adjunct to that, but it was my experience, at least in reviewing the literature, that the live birth and the breathing in the lungs were kind of the central focus of the medical inquiry, and that is really a very heavy lift for an ME.
Let me ask you, doctor, is this a matter of interpretation? Is it a black and white situation when you do this analysis, or could you have two experts looking at it and have differing opinions?
Well, doctors always love to differ in opinions because everybody likes to argue, but it is kind of a black and white situation where you're looking at those microscopic sections, whether they have air in them or not. Another, as the lawyer has mentioned, medieval test, if you will, is the lung float test. You can take a piece of lung, place it in a jar of water. If it floats, you can say, oh, there's air in there. But again, that can be affected by decomposition processes. So it is very difficult to determine if the child was born live or not. And you can get 2 doctors, 3 doctors, 4 doctors, all have different opinions on this. It is kind of black and white if the signs are there, but the problem is the signs are pretty subtle and they're hard to flesh out.
Mark, what's your experience? Is there pressure on prosecutors, like public pressure that a woman has to be charged? You know, the newborn is not alive. This mother must be charged.
Well, there's not only the public pressure, there's also the political kind of cultural divide over this. I mean, it becomes, I remember vividly this idea of fetus versus infant, how we're referring to it. The argument that was made is, how can you be charged with murder if you kill a pregnant woman, but you can't if you give birth and it's a stillborn? And there becomes all kinds of arguments and things that aren't really based on the science, if you will. And the doctor is right. He accurately read my mind when I said medieval. I was somewhat taken aback by the idea of the flotation test and some of the problems with that. I do think, Vinny, to your point, that depending on where you are and what the public perception is, there seems to be, at least anecdotally, a pattern here that you usually have a great deal of interest when you've got a young lady, and obviously a attractive young lady. I used to say whenever there was a missing female, I was on speedy dial on the cable news networks, because there tends to be kind of what gets the public fascinated, heats up the argument. But as the doctor will tell you, those things are not supposed to intrude on their opinions. And he's right, you could get 3 or 4 doctors to give you 3 or 4 opinions. My experience was I could get 1 doctor to give me 5 opinions. So the only part that I would separate from your good doctor there is that I don't think it's as black and white. It seemed to be a lot more nuanced to me, at least as a non-doctor or non-medical professional.